Welcome to Rush Learning Hub. Hello everyone, and welcome to this comprehensive UGC NET Environmental Science lecture series. I am your tutor, and in today's session we will begin our journey through Unit I, Fundamentals of Environmental Sciences. This unit forms the foundation of environmental science and is extremely important for UGC NET, JRF, SET examinations, university examinations, and competitive environmental studies programs. A strong understanding of the concepts covered in this unit will make the advanced units much easier to understand. In this lecture, we will explore environmental science as an interdisciplinary field that connects biology, chemistry, physics, geology, geography, atmospheric science, and social sciences to understand the relationship between humans and the environment. We will learn about the four major spheres of the Earth: atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere, and biosphere, and understand how these systems interact to support life on our planet. We will also discuss the fundamental laws of thermodynamics, energy flow, heat transfer processes, mass transfer mechanisms, and material balance concepts that govern natural environmental systems. A significant portion of this unit focuses on meteorology. We will study atmospheric pressure, temperature, humidity, precipitation, wind velocity, mixing ratio, saturation mixing ratio, adiabatic lapse rate, environmental lapse rate, and wind-rose diagrams. These concepts are frequently asked in UGC NET examinations and are essential for understanding weather and climate processes. Further, we will examine the interaction between humans and the environment, the concept of Biogeographic Provinces, Agro-Climatic zones of India, and the principles of sustainable development that guide modern environmental management. We will also cover natural resources and their assessment, including the role of remote sensing and geographic information systems, commonly known as GIS. These technologies have become powerful tools for environmental monitoring, resource management, urban planning, forestry, climate studies, and sustainable development. Towards the end of the unit, we will discuss environmental education, environmental awareness, and environmental ethics, topics that help us understand our responsibilities toward nature and future generations. My objective throughout this lecture is not only to help you understand the concepts but also to prepare you from an examination perspective. I will highlight important facts, conceptual connections, and areas from which questions are frequently asked in UGC NET. So keep a notebook ready, focus on understanding the concepts rather than memorizing isolated facts, and try to connect each topic with real-world environmental issues. Let's begin our study of environmental science from the very basics and build a strong foundation for success in UGC NET and beyond. Welcome once again to Rush Learning Hub. Now that we have seen the introduction, let's understand the complete roadmap of Unit I, Fundamentals of Environmental Sciences. Before diving into individual topics, it is important to understand how this entire unit is structured. Environmental science is an interdisciplinary subject, meaning all the concepts we study are interconnected rather than isolated. We begin with environmental science itself. Here, we will understand its definition, principles, and scope. Environmental science is not limited to studying nature, it integrates knowledge from biology, chemistry, physics, geology, geography, and social sciences to solve environmental problems and promote sustainable development. The next major area is the Earth system. Our planet functions through four major spheres: the atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere, and biosphere. The atmosphere provides the air we breathe, the hydrosphere includes all water resources, the lithosphere forms the land surface, and the biosphere contains all living organisms. Understanding how these spheres interact is essential for understanding environmental processes. After studying the Earth system, we move to thermodynamics. Every environmental process involves energy. Whether it is climate, ecosystems, water cycles, or biological activities, energy plays a central role. Therefore, we will study the first law of thermodynamics, the second law of thermodynamics, entropy and energy flow in environmental systems. The next important section is meteorology, which is one of the most frequently tested areas in UGC NET Environmental Science. We will study atmospheric temperature, pressure, humidity, precipitation, wind systems, mixing ratios, and lapse rates. These concepts help us understand weather patterns, climate systems, and atmospheric stability. Once we understand natural processes, we will examine human-environment interaction. Human activities such as industrialization, urbanization, agriculture, and resource extraction significantly affect environmental quality. Understanding this relationship helps us identify environmental challenges and develop sustainable solutions. This naturally leads us to sustainable development. Sustainable development aims to meet present needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. We will discuss the Brundtland Report, Sustainable Development Goals, and the principles of sustainability that guide environmental management worldwide. The next topic focuses on natural resources. Environmental scientists must understand the assessment, utilization, conservation, and management of resources such as forests, water, minerals, and energy resources. These resources form the foundation of economic development and human well-being. To manage resources effectively, modern environmental science uses advanced technologies such as remote sensing and geographic information systems, commonly known as GIS. Remote sensing allows us to collect information about the Earth's surface without direct contact, while GIS helps us store, analyze, and visualize spatial data. These tools are widely used in forestry, agriculture, urban planning, disaster management, climate studies, and environmental monitoring. Finally, we will study environmental education and ethics. Environmental awareness is essential for conservation and sustainable development. Environmental ethics helps us understand our moral responsibility toward nature, biodiversity, and future generations. By the end of this unit, you will develop strong conceptual clarity, an interdisciplinary environmental perspective, and a solid base for UGC NET preparation. Let us begin with the most fundamental question: what is environmental science? Environmental science is an interdisciplinary field of study that examines the interactions between humans and the natural environment. It combines knowledge from physical sciences, biological sciences, and social sciences to understand environmental processes, identify environmental problems, and develop sustainable solutions. In simple terms, environmental science helps us understand how nature works, how human activities affect the environment, and how environmental changes influence human life. One important point for UGC NET examinations is that environmental science is different from environmental studies. Environmental science focuses on scientific understanding, analysis, and problem solving, whereas environmental studies includes broader aspects such as awareness, education, policies, and social dimensions. Now let's discuss the scope of environmental science. The scope of environmental science is extremely broad because environmental issues affect every aspect of life. It includes the study of natural resources and their management, ecosystem structure and function, environmental quality, pollution control, climate and weather processes, biodiversity conservation, sustainable development, environmental policies, and human health. Environmental science is not limited to forests, wildlife, or pollution alone. It also includes energy resources, water management, climate change, disaster management, urban planning, agriculture, and technological tools such as remote sensing and GIS. This broad scope makes environmental science one of the most important disciplines for addressing global environmental challenges. Now let's move to the fundamental principles of environmental science. The first principle is the holistic approach. According to this principle, the environment must be viewed as a complete system rather than a collection of isolated parts. Changes in one component often affect many other components. For example, deforestation not only reduces forest cover but also affects soil quality, water availability, biodiversity, and climate. The second principle is interdisciplinary nature. Environmental problems cannot be solved by a single discipline. For example, climate change requires knowledge of atmospheric science, ecology, chemistry, economics, sociology, and public policy. Therefore, environmental scientists work across multiple fields to understand and solve complex environmental issues. The third principle is sustainability. Sustainability emphasizes meeting present needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. This principle forms the foundation of modern environmental management and sustainable development. The fourth principle is the precautionary principle. This principle states that if an activity has the potential to cause serious environmental damage, preventive action should be taken even if complete scientific certainty is not available. In environmental management, prevention is often better than correction. The fifth principle is conservation of nature. Natural resources are limited. Therefore, their use must be efficient, responsible, and sustainable. Conservation aims to maintain ecological balance while ensuring long-term availability of resources. The sixth principle is equity and justice. Environmental benefits and environmental burdens should be distributed fairly among all individuals and communities. Every person has the right to a healthy environment, regardless of economic or social status. Now let us understand why environmental science is called an interdisciplinary subject. Environmental science draws knowledge from many disciplines. Biology helps us understand ecosystems, biodiversity, and living organisms. Chemistry helps us study pollutants, nutrient cycles, water quality, and atmospheric composition. Physics explains energy transfer, radiation, heat flow, and climatic processes. Geology helps us understand rocks, minerals, soil formation, and Earth's structure. Geography provides insights into spatial patterns, landscapes, and environmental distribution. Social sciences help us understand human behavior, economics, population dynamics, governance, and environmental policies. This integration of multiple disciplines is one of the most distinctive features of environmental science. Finally, let us discuss the importance of environmental science. Environmental science helps us identify environmental problems and develop solutions. It provides the scientific basis for addressing climate change, pollution, biodiversity loss, and resource depletion. It supports sustainable resource management and environmental conservation. It helps governments formulate environmental policies and regulations. It contributes to public health by improving environmental quality. Most importantly, environmental science helps create a balance between human development and environmental protection. For UGC NET examination purposes, remember three keywords: interdisciplinary, sustainability, and environmental management. These concepts appear repeatedly across multiple units of the syllabus and form the foundation of environmental thinking. In summary, environmental science is an interdisciplinary field that studies the relationship between humans and the environment, applies scientific knowledge to environmental problems, promotes sustainability, and supports informed environmental decision-making. With this foundation established, we are now ready to move to the next major topic, the Earth's environmental spheres: atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere, and biosphere. The Earth functions as an integrated environmental system. These four spheres are not independent entities. They continuously interact with one another through the exchange of matter and energy. Understanding their structure, composition, functions, and interactions is essential for understanding environmental processes. Let us begin with the atmosphere. The atmosphere is the gaseous envelope surrounding the Earth. It is held around the planet by gravitational force and extends hundreds of kilometers above the Earth's surface. The atmosphere is composed primarily of nitrogen, which constitutes approximately 78% of the atmosphere, and oxygen, which constitutes about 21%. The remaining 1% includes argon, carbon dioxide, water vapor, ozone, and other trace gases. The atmosphere performs several important functions. It provides oxygen for respiration and carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. It regulates the Earth's temperature through the greenhouse effect, protects living organisms from harmful ultraviolet radiation through the ozone layer, and supports weather and climate systems. From the UGC NET perspective, it is important to remember that the atmosphere is divided into 5 major layers: the troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere, and exosphere. Most weather phenomena occur in the troposphere, while the ozone layer is located in the stratosphere. Now let us discuss the hydrosphere. The hydrosphere includes all forms of water present on Earth. This includes oceans, seas, rivers, lakes, groundwater, glaciers, polar ice caps, atmospheric moisture, and water vapor. Water covers approximately 71% of the Earth's surface, making it one of the most dominant components of the Earth system. The hydrosphere plays a crucial role in supporting life. Water acts as a universal solvent, participates in biological processes, regulates climate, transports nutrients, and supports aquatic ecosystems. An important examination fact is that approximately 97% of Earth's water is saline water found in oceans, while only about 3% is fresh water. A large portion of fresh water is locked in glaciers and ice caps. The movement of water through evaporation, condensation, precipitation, infiltration, runoff, and transpiration constitutes the hydrological cycle, which links the atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere, and biosphere. Next, we come to the lithosphere. The lithosphere represents the solid outer layer of the Earth. It consists of the Earth's crust and the uppermost part of the mantle. The lithosphere includes rocks, minerals, soils, mountains, valleys, and other landforms. It serves as the foundation for terrestrial ecosystems and provides essential natural resources such as minerals, fossil fuels, and fertile soils. Soil formation, weathering, erosion, plate tectonics, and geological processes occur within the lithosphere. The lithosphere is extremely important because it supports agriculture, infrastructure development, and terrestrial biodiversity. Students should remember that soil acts as a critical interface connecting the lithosphere with the atmosphere, hydrosphere, and biosphere. Now let us discuss the biosphere. The biosphere is the zone of life on Earth. It includes all living organisms, including plants, animals, microorganisms, and humans. The biosphere extends across portions of the atmosphere, hydrosphere, and lithosphere where life can exist. The biosphere contains ecosystems, food chains, food webs, and biological communities. It is responsible for the cycling of nutrients and the flow of energy through ecological systems. Living organisms continuously interact with their physical environment. Plants absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and release oxygen. Animals consume food and release carbon dioxide. Microorganisms decompose organic matter and recycle nutrients. Therefore, the biosphere acts as a dynamic link connecting all environmental spheres. Now let us understand how these spheres interact. Environmental systems operate through continuous exchanges of matter and energy. For example, water evaporates from oceans within the hydrosphere and enters the atmosphere. Atmospheric processes then cause condensation and precipitation. Rainwater reaches the lithosphere, where it supports vegetation and ecosystems within the biosphere. Similarly, plants in the biosphere absorb nutrients from the lithosphere and carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Through photosynthesis, they produce oxygen that is released back into the atmosphere. Weathering of rocks in the lithosphere contributes minerals to soil and water systems, while rivers transport these materials through the hydrosphere. These examples demonstrate that a change in one sphere can influence all other spheres. For instance, atmospheric pollution can affect water quality, soil health, and biodiversity. Deforestation in the biosphere can alter atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations and influence climate patterns. Therefore, environmental scientists study the Earth as an integrated system rather than as separate components. To summarize, the atmosphere provides air and climate regulation, the hydrosphere provides water resources, the lithosphere provides land and minerals, and the biosphere supports life. Together, these four interconnected spheres form the Earth system and sustain all environmental processes. A clear understanding of these spheres and their interactions forms the foundation for studying environmental science, ecosystem functioning, climate systems, resource management, and sustainable development. In this section, we will study the role of thermodynamics in environmental science. Thermodynamics is the branch of science that deals with energy, its transformation, and its movement within a system. Since all environmental processes require energy, thermodynamics provides the foundation for understanding ecosystems, climate systems, nutrient cycles, and environmental interactions. Let us begin with the first law of thermodynamics. The first law states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only be transformed from one form into another. Mathematically, delta U is equal to QW, where delta U represents the change in internal energy of a system, Q represents heat added to the system, and W represents work done by the system. In environmental systems, solar energy is converted into chemical energy through photosynthesis. Animals consume plants and transform that chemical energy into mechanical energy, heat, and biological work. The total energy is conserved, although its form changes continuously. Now let us discuss the second law of thermodynamics. The second law states that every natural process increases entropy. Entropy is a measure of disorder or randomness within a system. In simple terms, energy transformations are never 100% efficient. During every transfer, a portion of useful energy is lost as heat. For example, When plants capture solar energy, only a fraction is converted into biomass. When herbivores consume plants, much of that energy is lost through respiration and metabolic activities. The same pattern continues at higher trophic levels. Therefore, available energy decreases as we move through food chains and food webs. This leads us to the concept of entropy. A highly organized system has low entropy, while a highly disordered system has high entropy. Natural processes generally move toward greater entropy. This explains why energy flow in ecosystems is unidirectional and why continuous solar input is required to maintain life on Earth. Now let us examine energy flow in environmental systems. The sun is the primary source of energy for nearly all ecosystems. Plants, known as producers, capture solar energy through photosynthesis and convert it into chemical energy. This energy is transferred to consumers through feeding relationships and finally reaches decomposers, which break down organic matter and recycle nutrients. At every trophic level, a significant portion of energy is lost as heat. Consequently, only a small fraction of energy is transferred to the next trophic level. This explains the ecological principle that energy flows through ecosystems, whereas nutrients cycle within ecosystems. Thermodynamics also helps us understand many environmental processes. Climate systems depend on the transfer of solar energy and heat balance within the atmosphere. The hydrological cycle operates through energy-driven processes such as evaporation, condensation, and precipitation. Soil formation, decomposition, nutrient cycling, and ecosystem productivity are all governed by energy transformations. In environmental management, thermodynamic principles help us evaluate energy efficiency, resource utilization, pollution control, and sustainable development strategies. To summarize, the first law explains energy conservation, the second law explains energy degradation and entropy, and together these laws help us understand how energy moves through environmental systems. These concepts form the scientific basis for ecosystem functioning, climate processes, resource management, and environmental sustainability. In this section, we will study meteorology, which is the scientific study of the atmosphere and atmospheric processes. Meteorology is one of the most important topics in UGC NET Environmental Science because it helps us understand weather, climate, atmospheric stability, pollution dispersion, and environmental processes. The major meteorological parameters include temperature, atmospheric pressure, humidity, wind, precipitation, and lapse rates. These parameters are closely interconnected, and a change in one parameter influences the others. Let us begin with temperature. Temperature is the degree of hotness or coldness of air. It is usually measured in degrees Celsius or Kelvin. In the troposphere, temperature generally decreases with altitude at an average rate of approximately 6.5 degrees Celsius per kilometer. This value is known as the environmental lapse rate. Temperature controls several atmospheric processes including air density, pressure, humidity, evaporation, condensation, and cloud formation. Next, atmospheric pressure. Atmospheric pressure is the force exerted by the weight of air above a given area. It is measured in hectopascals or millibars. Atmospheric pressure decreases with increasing altitude because the density of air decreases at higher elevations. High-pressure systems are generally associated with clear and stable weather conditions, whereas low-pressure systems are associated with cloudy, rainy, and unstable weather conditions. Pressure differences within the atmosphere are the primary cause of wind movement. Now let us discuss humidity. Humidity refers to the amount of water vapor present in the atmosphere. Several forms of humidity are used in meteorology, including absolute humidity, specific humidity, and relative humidity. For UGC NET examinations, relative humidity is particularly important. Relative humidity is the ratio of the actual water vapor present in the air to the maximum amount of water vapor the air can hold at a particular temperature, expressed as a percentage. When relative humidity approaches 100%, the air becomes saturated, leading to condensation, cloud formation, fog, dew, and precipitation. Now let us discuss wind. Wind is the horizontal movement of air from regions of high pressure to regions of low pressure. Wind movement is controlled primarily by three factors: pressure gradient force, Coriolis force, and friction. Pressure gradient force initiates air movement. The Coriolis force deflects wind direction due to Earth's rotation, and friction modifies wind speed near the Earth's surface. The major planetary wind systems include trade winds, westerlies, and polar easterlies. Understanding global wind circulation is important because it influences climate, rainfall distribution, ocean circulation, and pollutant transport. Next is precipitation. Precipitation refers to any form of water released from the atmosphere that reaches the Earth's surface. Common forms include rain, drizzle, snow, sleet, and hail. Precipitation occurs when water vapor condenses around condensation nuclei and cloud droplets or ice crystals grow large enough to overcome atmospheric uplift. The amount and distribution of precipitation play a critical role in agriculture, water resources, ecosystems, and climate systems. Now let us discuss lapse rates, one of the most important examination topics. A lapse rate refers to the rate at which temperature decreases with altitude. The environmental lapse rate, or ELR, is approximately 6.5 degrees Celsius per kilometer under average atmospheric conditions. The dry adiabatic lapse rate, or DLR, is approximately 9.8 degrees Celsius per kilometer. This applies to unsaturated air parcels. The saturated adiabatic lapse rate, or SOL, ranges approximately from 4 to 7 degrees Celsius per kilometer and applies to saturated air parcels. The relationship between ELR, DLR, and SOL determines atmospheric stability. When ELR is greater than DLR, the atmosphere is unstable. When ELR is equal to DLR, the atmosphere is neutral. When ELR is less than SOL, the atmosphere is stable. Atmospheric stability is extremely important because it controls vertical air movement, cloud formation, storm development, and pollutant dispersion. For UGC NET examinations, questions are frequently asked regarding DLR, SOL, ELR, atmospheric stability, humidity concepts, pressure systems, and precipitation mechanisms. Let us now understand the interrelationship among meteorological parameters. Solar radiation heats the Earth's surface. This influences temperature. Temperature differences create pressure differences. Pressure differences generate winds. Wind movement affects humidity distribution and cloud formation. Cloud formation eventually leads to precipitation. Thus, temperature, pressure, humidity, wind, and precipitation function as parts of a single atmospheric system. In summary, temperature controls atmospheric energy, pressure drives air movement, humidity represents atmospheric moisture, wind redistributes energy and moisture, precipitation returns water to the Earth's surface, and lapse rates determine atmospheric stability. Together, these meteorological parameters govern weather, climate, environmental quality, and many ecological processes that are fundamental to environmental science. Human beings are both dependent on and influential toward the environment. The environment provides essential resources such as air, water, soil, minerals, forests, energy, and ecosystem services that support human survival and development. At the same time, human activities continuously modify environmental systems through resource extraction, agriculture, industrialization, urbanization, and technological development. Therefore, the relationship between humans and the environment is dynamic and reciprocal. Humans depend on the environment, while environmental quality directly influences human health, economy, and well-being. Let us first understand the nature of human-environment interaction. The environment provides resources and ecosystem services necessary for life. These include food production, freshwater supply, climate regulation, nutrient cycling, soil formation, pollination, and waste assimilation. Human societies utilize these resources for economic growth and development. However, the extent of environmental impact depends on factors such as population size, consumption patterns, technology, and resource use efficiency. Human-environment interaction can be positive or negative. Positive interactions include conservation, afforestation, watershed management, pollution control, renewable energy adoption, and sustainable resource utilization. Negative interactions include overexploitation of resources, pollution, habitat destruction, biodiversity loss, and environmental degradation. Now let us discuss the major drivers of human impact on the environment. The first driver is population growth. As population increases, demand for food, water, energy, housing, and natural resources also increases. This places significant pressure on environmental systems. The second driver is industrialization. Industrial activities contribute to air pollution, water pollution, soil contamination, greenhouse gas emissions, and waste generation. Although industries support economic development, they can also create environmental challenges if not properly managed. The third driver is agricultural expansion. Conversion of forests and natural ecosystems into agricultural land often leads to deforestation, habitat fragmentation, soil degradation, and biodiversity loss. The fourth driver is urbanization. Rapid urban growth increases land use change, resource consumption, transportation demands, waste generation, and pollution levels. The fifth driver is consumerism and changing lifestyles. Increasing consumption of goods and services requires greater resource extraction and energy use, leading to larger environmental footprints. Finally, technology acts as both a challenge and a solution. Certain technologies contribute to environmental degradation, while others help improve resource efficiency, pollution control, environmental monitoring, and sustainable development. Let us now examine the major environmental impacts of human activities. One of the most significant impacts is resource depletion. Unsustainable extraction of forests, groundwater, minerals, fossil fuels, and other natural resources reduces their availability for future generations. Another major impact is pollution. Human activities release pollutants into the air, water, and soil. Air pollution affects atmospheric quality and human health. Water pollution reduces water quality and threatens aquatic ecosystems. Soil pollution decreases land productivity and ecosystem health. Climate change is another critical environmental issue. The burning of fossil fuels, industrial activities, and deforestation increase greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere. This enhances the greenhouse effect and contributes to global warming and climate change. Human activities also contribute to biodiversity loss. Habitat destruction, overexploitation, invasive species, pollution, and climate change are major causes of species decline and extinction worldwide. Land degradation is another serious consequence. Unsustainable agricultural practices, deforestation, overgrazing, mining, and improper land management can result in soil erosion, desertification, salinization, and loss of soil fertility. Environmental degradation also affects human health. Exposure to polluted air, contaminated water, hazardous chemicals, and environmental disasters increases health risks and reduces quality of life. To address these challenges, sustainable interaction between humans and the environment is essential. Sustainable use of resources ensures that resource consumption remains within the regenerative capacity of natural systems. Conservation and restoration efforts help protect ecosystems, biodiversity, and ecological functions. Environmental education and awareness encourage responsible environmental behavior and informed decision-making. Environmental laws, policies, and governance mechanisms play a crucial role in regulating resource use and controlling environmental degradation. Technological innovation supports cleaner production methods, renewable energy development, efficient resource utilization, and environmental monitoring. For UGC NET examinations, it is important to understand that sustainable development seeks to balance three interconnected dimensions: environmental protection, economic development, and social well-being. Sustainable development was formally defined in the Brundtland Report of 1987 as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. The concept emerged because rapid industrialization, population growth, and resource exploitation were causing environmental degradation and resource depletion. Sustainable development is based on three pillars: environmental protection, economic development, and social equity. Environmental protection focuses on conserving natural resources and maintaining ecological balance. Economic development ensures growth, employment, and improved standards of living. Social equity emphasizes fair access to resources, opportunities, and benefits across society. A development strategy can be considered sustainable only when all three pillars are balanced. Several important principles support sustainable development. The principle of intergenerational equity states that future generations should have access to resources and environmental quality comparable to those available today. The principle of intragenerational equity emphasizes fair distribution of resources among people living in the present generation. The precautionary principle states that preventive action should be taken when there is a risk of serious environmental damage, even if complete scientific certainty is unavailable. The polluter pays principle states that those responsible for pollution should bear the costs of preventing, controlling, and remedying environmental damage. Remember that the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, were adopted by the United Nations in 2015 and consist of 17 global goals aimed at achieving sustainability by 2030. Let us now move to biogeographic provinces. Biogeography is the study of the geographical distribution of plants, animals, and ecosystems. Biogeographic provinces are regions characterized by distinct flora, fauna, climate, geological history, and ecological conditions. The classical biogeographic classification proposed by Alfred Russel Wallace divided the world into major biogeographic regions. These include the Nearctic region, Neotropical region, Palearctic region, Afrotropical region, Indomalayan region, and Australasian region. Each region possesses unique species assemblages that evolved under specific environmental and historical conditions. Biogeographic classification is important because it helps scientists understand biodiversity patterns, species evolution, conservation priorities, and ecological relationships. Now let us focus on the biogeographic zones of India. India is one of the world's megadiverse countries and exhibits remarkable ecological diversity due to variations in climate, topography, and geology. According to the classification by Rogers and Pamwar, India is divided into 10 major biogeographic zones. These are Trans-Himalay, Himalay, Desert, Semi-arid region, Western Ghats, Deccan Peninsula, Gangetic Plain, Northeast India, Islands, and coasts. Each zone contains characteristic ecosystems, species diversity, and environmental conditions. For example, the Western Ghats and Northeast India are recognized as biodiversity hotspots because of their high species richness and endemism. The Himalayas support unique alpine and temperate ecosystems, while the desert zone is adapted to arid environmental conditions. Understanding these zones is important for biodiversity conservation, wildlife management, environmental planning, and protected area development. Let us now discuss agro-climatic zones of India. An agro-climatic zone is a geographical area having similar climatic conditions, soil characteristics, rainfall patterns, and agricultural potential. Agro-climatic classification helps in scientific agricultural planning and efficient resource utilization. The Planning Commission classified India into 15 agro-climatic regions. These classifications consider temperature, rainfall, soil type, water availability, and cropping patterns. Different agro-climatic zones support different agricultural systems. For example, regions with high rainfall are suitable for rice cultivation, while semi-arid regions are more suitable for drought-resistant crops such as millets and pulses. Agro-climatic zoning assists in crop selection, irrigation planning, land use management, agricultural productivity enhancement, and climate-resilient farming practices. From the examination perspective, it is important to understand the difference between biogeographic zones and agroclimatic zones. Biogeographic zones are based primarily on biodiversity, ecological characteristics, and species distribution. Agroclimatic zones are based primarily on climate, soil conditions, and agricultural suitability. To summarize, sustainable development provides a framework for balancing environmental protection, economic growth, and social equity. Biogeographic provinces help explain the global and regional distribution of biodiversity, while agroclimatic zones support scientific agricultural planning and resource management. Together, these concepts play a critical role in environmental conservation, sustainable resource use, biodiversity management, and long-term sustainable development. In this section, we will study natural resources and their assessment, an important topic in environmental science because natural resources form the foundation of human survival, economic development, and ecosystem functioning. Natural resources are materials and environmental components obtained from nature that are useful to humans. These include forests, water, minerals, energy resources, soil, and biodiversity. Natural resources can be broadly classified into renewable and non-renewable resources. Renewable resources can regenerate naturally within a relatively short period of time. Examples include forests, water, solar energy, wind energy, and biomass. Non-renewable resources exist in finite quantities and require geological time for formation. Examples include coal, petroleum, natural gas, and metallic minerals. Let us first discuss forest resources. Forests are among the most valuable renewable resources. They provide timber, fuelwood, fodder, medicines, fibers, and numerous non-timber forest products. In addition to economic benefits, forests provide important ecological services such as biodiversity conservation, soil protection, carbon sequestration, watershed protection, and climate regulation. However, deforestation, habitat fragmentation, and unsustainable exploitation continue to threaten forest ecosystems worldwide. Next, water resources. Water is an essential resource for life, agriculture, industry, and ecosystem functioning. Major sources of fresh water include rivers, lakes, reservoirs, groundwater, glaciers, and rainfall. Although water is renewable through the hydrological cycle, increasing demand, pollution, over-extraction, and climate change have created water stress in many regions. Sustainable water management requires conservation, efficient utilization, watershed management, and protection of water quality. Now let us discuss mineral resources. Minerals are naturally occurring inorganic substances found in the Earth's crust. Mineral resources can be classified into metallic minerals, non-metallic minerals, and energy minerals. Examples of metallic minerals include iron, copper, aluminium, and manganese. Examples of non-metallic minerals include limestone, gypsum, mica, and phosphate. Energy minerals include coal, petroleum, and natural gas. Since most mineral resources are non-renewable, their extraction and utilization require careful planning and efficient management. Next are energy resources. Energy resources are essential for economic development and technological advancement. They are broadly classified into conventional and non-conventional energy resources. Conventional energy resources include coal, petroleum, natural gas, and hydropower. Non-conventional or renewable energy resources include solar energy, wind energy, biomass energy, geothermal energy, tidal energy, and hydrogen energy. The transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources is a major component of sustainable development and climate change mitigation strategies. Another important natural resource is biodiversity. Biodiversity refers to the variety of living organisms, including plants, animals, microorganisms, and their genetic diversity. Biodiversity supports ecosystem stability, nutrient cycling, pollination, food production, and ecological resilience. Loss of biodiversity reduces ecosystem functioning and threatens long-term environmental sustainability. Let us now discuss resource assessment. Resource assessment refers to the systematic evaluation of the quantity, quality, distribution, and utilization status of natural resources. Assessment is necessary for planning, conservation, sustainable utilization, and policy formulation. Several methods are used for resource assessment. Inventory methods involve systematic identification and quantification of resources. Field surveys and sampling techniques provide direct information regarding resource availability and condition. Remote sensing and geographic information systems are widely used for large-scale resource assessment because they provide accurate spatial information over extensive geographical areas. Mathematical models and simulation techniques help predict resource availability and future trends. Continuous monitoring programs are used to detect environmental changes and evaluate resource status over time. Now let us discuss conservation strategies. Conservation aims to protect resources while ensuring their sustainable use. In situ conservation protects species and ecosystems within their natural habitats. Examples include national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, and biosphere reserves. Ex situ conservation protects biological resources outside their natural habitats. Examples include botanical gardens, zoos, seed banks, and gene banks. Sustainable harvesting ensures that resource extraction remains within the regenerative capacity of ecosystems. Restoration measures such as afforestation, watershed management, habitat restoration, and soil conservation help recover degraded ecosystems. Community participation is increasingly recognized as a key component of successful resource conservation and management. Finally, sustainable resource management integrates ecological, economic, and social considerations. The goal is to meet current resource needs while maintaining resource availability for future generations. Key approaches include efficient resource utilization, pollution prevention, recycling, reuse, recovery of materials, adoption of clean technologies, and implementation of effective environmental policies. For UGC NET examinations, students should remember that resource assessment provides the scientific basis for conservation planning, sustainable development, environmental management, and policy decision-making. To summarize, forests, water, minerals, energy resources, and biodiversity are critical natural resources. Their assessment helps determine resource status and availability, while conservation and sustainable management ensure long-term ecological stability, economic development, and environmental security. In this section, we will study remote sensing and geographic information systems, commonly known as GIS. These are among the most important tools used in modern environmental science for data collection, monitoring, analysis, planning, and decision-making. Let us begin with remote sensing. Remote sensing is the science and art of obtaining information about an object, area, or phenomenon without making physical contact with it. The principle of remote sensing is based on the interaction between electromagnetic radiation and Earth's surface features. Every object on the Earth's surface reflects, absorbs, or emits electromagnetic energy in a unique manner. Sensors record this information and convert it into useful environmental data. The basic components of a remote sensing system include an energy source, atmospheric transmission, interaction with the target, sensor detection, data transmission, and data interpretation. The sun is the primary natural energy source for most remote sensing applications. Artificial sources such as radar and LiDAR are also used in active remote sensing systems. A fundamental concept in remote sensing is the electromagnetic spectrum. The electromagnetic spectrum consists of different wavelengths ranging from gamma rays to radio waves. In environmental studies, the most important regions are visible light, infrared radiation, and microwave radiation. Visible light helps identify land cover features. Infrared radiation is useful for vegetation analysis, moisture detection, and thermal studies. Microwave radiation is particularly important because it can penetrate clouds and operate during both day and night conditions. Now let us discuss sensors and platforms. Sensors are devices that detect and record electromagnetic energy. Common sensor types include optical sensors, thermal sensors, microwave sensors, hyperspectral sensors, and LiDAR sensors. Platforms refer to the carriers that hold these sensors. Satellite platforms include missions such as Landsat, Sentinel, IRS, and Cartosat. Aerial platforms include aircraft and drones. Ground-based systems are known as terrestrial platforms. An important examination topic is resolution in remote sensing. There are four major types of resolution. Spatial resolution refers to the size of the smallest object that can be detected. Spectral resolution refers to the ability of a sensor to distinguish between different wavelengths. Temporal resolution refers to the frequency with which a sensor revisits the same location. Radiometric resolution refers to the ability of a sensor to detect small differences in energy levels. Higher resolution generally provides more detailed environmental information. Let us now move to GIS. GIS stands for Geographic Information System. GIS is a computer-based system designed for capturing, storing, managing, analyzing, and displaying geographically referenced information. While remote sensing primarily collects spatial data, GIS organizes and analyzes that data to support decision-making. The major components of GIS include hardware, software, data, people, and methods. Hardware includes computers, servers, GPS devices, and storage systems. Software includes GIS programs such as ArcGIS, QGIS, and ADAS Imagine. Data forms the core of GIS and includes both spatial and attribute information. People and analytical methods are essential for effective GIS operations and interpretation. GIS data are generally represented into formats, raster and vector. Raster data consist of grids or pixels and are suitable for representing continuous phenomena such as elevation, rainfall, and temperature. Vector data represent geographic features using points, lines, and polygons. Examples include roads, rivers, administrative boundaries, and land parcels. Another important topic is digital image processing. Digital image processing improves the quality and usefulness of remotely sensed images. Major steps include image enhancement, geometric correction, image classification, change detection, and accuracy assessment. Image classification can be supervised or unsupervised and is widely used in land use and land cover mapping. Ground truthing is another important concept. Ground truthing refers to field verification of remotely sensed data. It involves collecting actual observations from the ground and comparing them with satellite-derived information. Ground truthing improves classification accuracy and ensures reliable interpretation of environmental data. Now let us discuss the applications of remote sensing and GIS. In land use and land cover studies, they help identify forests, agricultural lands, urban areas, wetlands, and water bodies. In forestry, they are used for forest inventory, biomass estimation, habitat assessment, and monitoring deforestation. In urban planning, they help monitor urban sprawl, infrastructure development, and land use change. In water resource management, they assist in watershed mapping, groundwater studies, flood monitoring, and water quality assessment. In agriculture, they support crop acreage estimation, yield prediction, drought assessment, and precision farming. In disaster management, they are used for monitoring floods, cyclones, landslides, earthquakes, and forest fires. In climate change studies, they help assess temperature trends, vegetation changes, glacier retreat, and sea level rise. In waste management and pollution monitoring, they support landfill site selection, pollution mapping, and environmental impact assessment. For UGC NET examinations, students should remember a simple distinction. Remote sensing is primarily concerned with acquiring spatial information. GIS is primarily concerned with storing, managing, analyzing, and displaying spatial information. Together, remote sensing and GIS provide powerful tools for environmental monitoring, resource assessment, planning, and sustainable environmental management. To summarize, remote sensing collects environmental information through sensors, GIS organizes and analyzes that information, digital image processing improves data quality, and ground truthing validates the results. These technologies have become indispensable tools in modern environmental science and environmental decision-making. In this section, we will study environmental education, environmental awareness, and environmental ethics. These concepts are essential because environmental conservation cannot be achieved through technology and policies alone. Long-term environmental protection requires informed individuals, responsible behavior, and ethical decision-making. Let us begin with environmental education. Environmental education is the process of developing knowledge, skills, attitudes, values, and awareness related to the environment and environmental issues. The objective of environmental education is not only to provide information but also to encourage responsible environmental behavior and participation in solving environmental problems. According to the objectives outlined by UNESCO and UNEP, environmental education aims to develop awareness of environmental issues, knowledge about environmental systems, positive attitudes toward environmental protection, skills for identifying and solving environmental problems, and active participation in environmental decision-making. Environmental education is considered a lifelong process and can be delivered through formal education, non-formal education, and informal learning. Formal education includes school, college, and university curricula. Non-formal education includes training programs, workshops, extension activities, and awareness campaigns. Informal education occurs through media, social interactions, community participation, and personal experiences. Environmental education plays an important role in promoting sustainable development, biodiversity conservation, pollution prevention, resource conservation, and climate action. Now let us discuss environmental awareness. Environmental awareness refers to understanding environmental issues and recognizing the importance of environmental protection. Awareness helps individuals understand how their actions affect the environment and encourages environmentally responsible behavior. Major environmental awareness issues include climate change, air pollution, water pollution, deforestation, biodiversity loss, waste management, resource depletion, and sustainable consumption. Environmental awareness can be promoted through public campaigns, educational institutions, community participation, environmental movements, media communication, and government initiatives. In India, environmental awareness has been strengthened through environmental legislation, educational programs, conservation campaigns, and public participation initiatives. Awareness is important because environmental policies and conservation programs become more effective when citizens actively support and participate in them. Let us now move to environmental ethics. Environmental ethics is a branch of philosophy that examines the moral relationship between humans and the environment. It addresses questions such as: do humans have responsibilities toward nature? Should natural resources be used without limits? Do non-human organisms possess intrinsic value? How should humans interact with ecosystems and biodiversity? Environmental ethics provides a framework for making environmentally responsible decisions. There are several major approaches in environmental ethics. The first is anthropocentrism. Anthropocentrism is a human-centered approach. According to this view, the environment is important primarily because it supports human welfare and development. Natural resources are valued mainly for their usefulness to humans. The second approach is biocentrism. Biocentrism argues that all living organisms possess intrinsic value and deserve moral consideration. According to this perspective, humans are only one component of the biological community and do not possess absolute superiority over other forms of life. The third approach is ecocentrism. Ecocentrism extends moral concern beyond individual organisms to entire ecosystems. This approach emphasizes ecological integrity, ecosystem health, biodiversity conservation, and long-term sustainability. According to ecocentric thinking, humans are part of nature rather than separate from it. Another important concept is deep ecology. Deep ecology was proposed by Ernest Naes. It argues that all living beings possess inherent value regardless of their usefulness to humans. Deep ecology advocates reduced resource consumption, biodiversity conservation, ecological balance, and harmonious coexistence between humans and nature. Another widely accepted ethical principle is stewardship. The stewardship concept states that humans are caretakers of the environment and have a responsibility to manage natural resources wisely for present and future generations. Environmental ethics is closely linked with sustainable development because both emphasize responsible resource use, conservation, intergenerational equity, and environmental responsibility. For UGC NET examinations, students should clearly understand the differences among anthropocentric, biocentric, and ecocentric approaches, as questions are frequently asked from these concepts. To summarize, environmental education develops environmental knowledge and skills. Environmental awareness promotes informed participation in environmental protection, and environmental ethics provides moral principles for human interaction with nature. Together, these concepts form the foundation for responsible environmental citizenship, sustainable development, and long-term environmental conservation. Thank you for learning with Rush Learning Hub. Like, share, comment. Rise, upgrade, shine, honor. See you in the next lecture. Best of luck for UGC NET.